Hey guys, welcome to day 2 of Zabbix Summit. I hope you enjoyed yesterday's presentations. I hope you had a great party. I hope you are well rested, and to those who managed to attend the exam sessions in the morning, the workshop sessions, I hope you managed to pass. I hope you got some new hands-on experience from the workshops. I was attending them. They looked really interesting and in-depth. So hopefully you're here with some new knowledge, refreshed, and ready to go. So before we begin, I would like to once again say thanks to all of our Zabbix Summit 2024 sponsors. Without them, this event wouldn't be the same, possibly wouldn't be at all. So our sponsors are a large part of why we are here, both meaning the venue and the event, and why Zabbix as a product is where they are. So thanks to InitMax, our diamond sponsor. Thanks to Quadrata, our platinum sponsor. Easy IT, our platinum sponsor. IntelliTrend, our platinum sponsor. Alenta, our gold sponsor. Metric.io, our gold sponsor. Docomo Business, our gold sponsor. And SRA OSS, our silver sponsor. Thank you, guys. Let's have a round of applause for our sponsors. Thank you. You will also be able to visit the sponsors booths. Over here, you can see the layout on the screen. So essentially, you don't have to memorize this. You can just walk outside, and you'll see various sponsor booths. They'll be glad to see you. I'll tell you about what kind of services and products they provide, and you can simply just have a chat with them. I've seen a couple of those booths. They look really great, and the people there are super friendly. So if you want to network a bit, talk to our sponsors. They'll be glad to just chat with you and talk about things. Next up, this is the agenda QR code for today. Feel free to scan it, or you can find it on our website, of course. We will have a couple of interesting stretches. We will begin with speeches focused on AI. We'll have multiple speeches in a row focused on how AI can be used for monitoring, alerting, various other things to do with monitoring and Zabbix in general. You can also ask questions. The question QR code will be available later on the screen. Same as yesterday. Ask your questions. We will read them out loud. Then next up, there is the merch shop. Once again, it's available as you step right outside. You'll see our Zabbix employees selling merch. Different kind of merch is available. Most of you have probably already grabbed some. If you're thinking, hey, maybe I should grab this great cap, or the bag, or various t-shirts that we have, the next break would be a good time to do so. So also, Zabbix has various booths here. We have the Zabbix booth where you can talk to our support engineers, our sales guys, dev team. Ask them your questions. Maybe you have a particular feature that you want to ask about, or talk to sales guys about some business opportunities. That's why we're here. If you also simply want to chat, we're also available. Then we also have the cloud booth. We had the cloud presentation this morning done by Dimitris. The thing with the cloud is we've answered so many questions that if you simply want to chat, feel free to approach those guys. They're there. They're like, oh my God, the cloud, it just works. No complaints, no nothing. So they have a lot of free time on their hands. So if you want to ask them about cloud plans for the future, or just chat with them, they'll be grateful. And once again, if you want to share your Zabbix case study or a unique use case with the world, this is something that we've been trying to have a go at for the past year. This has been extremely valuable for us. Case studies such as Zabbix at the International Space Station, or Zabbix for water quality monitoring. We also had case studies yesterday in the business track, Zabbix for public transportation monitoring. Any case study that you wish to share with us, we very much endorse you to do so. You can either leave a written review or share a video testimonial. You'll receive a reward. But most of all, firstly, you'll help us spread the word. You'll help us learn how our customers and community members use Zabbix. And this also helps us evolve the terminology that Alexei used yesterday. We need to know how you guys use Zabbix for us to be able to evolve in the right direction. So this is extremely helpful for us. Then once again, if you want to take a picture behind or in front of our photo wall, it's still there. take a picture with the Zabbix team, take a picture with your colleagues, with our sponsors, share it with the world. You're here, it's a yearly opportunity. Why not share it and have a great memory of how the event went for you? And of course, if you want to share your feedback, comments, or just chat with people mentioning Zabbix Summit, tag us at Zabbix on social networks or use hashtag Zabbix Summit 2024 and leave your feedback or comment. That, once again, spreads the word and maybe gets interest of some other community members that didn't attend this year, and they'll be like, okay, this looks very fun, this looks very useful, I'll be there next year. And this is the QR code I mentioned. It'll be available on the side of the screen also down the line with questions for speakers during the speeches are very much welcome. So let's continue. We will start with our first speech. We will, like I said, talk about AI. We will talk about approaches to reduce alert noise with Zabbix and AI ops. Let's welcome Birol Yildiz, CEO, co-founder at iAlert GmbH from Germany. Welcome.
Perfect, but it doesn't work in my case, I believe. Thank you, Arthur. It is really a pleasure to be here. And I'm not sure if this has been said. Really shout out to the Zabbix team. You've put a great conference together at a great location and with a really large audience. In fact, let me take a picture, a selfie for my daughter. Wow, she's gonna think I'm a rock star. Until she hears the talk, the recording, and then she'll be like, what was that? Why are you punishing so many people? It's boring as hell. You know, before this presentation, I received a checklist from the Zabbix presenter team, and they said, start with a joke. And I'm trying really hard. They said, it keeps the audience engaged. So are you engaged? Perfect. So my name is Birol. I am the co-founder and CEO of iAlert. iAlert is a company based in Germany. We're a SaaS company for incident response. And as of today, we cover everything around incident response. This includes alerting, on-call management, status pages, and incoming phone call routing. And we have been an integration partner with Zabbix for quite some time. Like 2016 was the first integration partnership. And I think it has been among our first 10 integrations whatsoever. And we have over 100 integrations. And one thing I can definitely confirm, what Alexei said yesterday, is that the Zabbix community is all over the world. So even among our customers, like all the customers who use iAlert in combination with Zabbix, they are all over the place. So that's really nice to see. We're used by DevOps teams, SRE teams, IT ops teams to reduce response time. So the single goal of using iAlert is helping teams respond faster to incidents and reduce MTTR. And then we serve as the central dispatcher for critical events in a company and route those critical events to the right people and do things like calling you at 3 a.m. in the morning, sending you a push notification. If you don't pick up, call your colleague, so on and so forth. And we are very proud to serve small and large companies alike. The companies like Rewe, one of the largest grocery retailers in Europe, use iAlert for incident response. Or IKEA, the largest furniture manufacturer and retailer, use iAlert among 3 continents for incident response. I'd like to set the stage by showing you the results one of our customers was able to achieve through intelligent alert grouping. This is what we're going to talk about right now. So another AI talk. So within 2 weeks after enabling intelligent alert grouping, that particular customer was able to reduce 93% of alert volume and was able to save over 4 hours in response time. And as you know, every minute in saved response time is a minute in an improved MTTR. And every minute in MTTR improvement leads to service uptime, which is one of the most important KPIs for IT ops teams. And this is pretty much in line with what Alexei said yesterday, in line with Zabbix's mission to help companies deliver flawless services for a better world. What a powerful mission. So let me show you how you can achieve this too. So this talk will be like somewhat technical, but not as technical as Wolfgang's AI talk yesterday. So no autoencoder deep neural networks with LSTM cells, long short-term memory whatsoever. But we'll talk about a few concepts, and I would like to walk you through a few concepts that are helpful to understand what I'm going to talk, how to reduce alert noise. Let's first set the, be on the same page what alert deduplication means, or what we mean by alert deduplication. Alert deduplication is the process of identifying multiple alerts that refer to the same underlying issue, and we group them into a single alert. So yes, this can be also things like root cause and symptoms, but also they're just plain duplicates, where you have multiple alerts that refer to the same issue. And the goal is to avoid being flooded with multiple things, avoid having to review multiple alerts, and saving time, valuable time when you are in firefighting mode. And we're going to use a technique called embeddings similarity search for deduplication. Sounds clunky, right? But bear with me for a second, I'll walk you through the concepts. This technique uses vector embeddings. What are vector embeddings? Vector embeddings, it's a mathematical representation of data in a high-dimensional space, where each point or vector represents a specific piece of data, such as a word, a sentence, a document, or in our case, an alert. And these vectors, they are the closeness of these vectors to each other, they represent their semantic relationship. And this is the main advantage of this approach, is we're not going to look at textual similarity of alerts, we're going to look at the semantics of these alerts and group them by their semantic similarity. And in fact, these vectors, they are everywhere in AI and large language models. When you, for example, use ChatGPT, enter a prompt, your prompt will be turned into a series of numbers first, and then sent to ChatGPT or to the large language model. But the question is, of course, what's the algorithm behind turning data into a series of numbers? And this is where the magic comes in. We're going to use an embedding model. And these embedding models, they are a special type of machine learning model, a special type of pre-trained machine learning model that learns to represent a specific category of data. These could be images, these could be texts. And in our case, it's a general purpose model that was trained on a large and a variety set of data, including common data like Wikipedia, but also technical data, for example, question and answer pairs from Stack Overflow. And this is not the large language model when you talk, for example, with ChatGPT that gives answers. It's just a special model that turns your input into these vectors. Again, an example, a sentence like this will be transformed into a series of potentially thousands of numbers, depending on the cardinality, on the dimension of the underlying model that is used. Okay, but how can we use this for embedding similarity search? How can we use this for alert deduplication? It's a three-step process. First, we pre-process the alerts. Then we turn these alerts into vectors. Then we apply our deduplication logic. So let me walk you through each step. In the first step, pre-processing involves normalization and cleaning. By normalizing, we mean having a common format to represent alerts. For us, it's a given because we are a software platform and we collect alerts from a variety of tools, and there's a common format. I think in the case of Zabbix, that's the case too. And then there's a cleaning process where we remove everything that is not relevant for the task at hand, for the task of deduplication. These are things like unique IDs. That's not relevant for deduplication, or timestamps, also not relevant for deduplication. Or if you represent your alerts in, for example, in JSON format, we also remove all these syntactic elements from this JSON document. This will not only save you tokens, which like as of today, is still the primary cost driver in any LLM application. It will just reduce the alert to its essence, and we end up with a plain text alert. This plain text alert is then transformed into a vector using these embedding models. And these embedding models you can use, for example, one of those that are provided by OpenAI. They have an API just for text embeddings. You send something and you get vectors back. In our case, this wasn't an option because like event processing, think of it like stream processing, it's a very core part of our software, and we process on any given day like millions of events, and we don't want to rely on an external API for this critical process. Like even if the API is super fast, it's still a network call. Instead, we are hosting these embedding models on our own infrastructure, turning each alert into these vectors and store these alerts, these vectors in a vector database. And the vector database really is optimized for storing vectors and also to perform queries on these vectors. And we'll see why that is important in a second. And now comes logic. So each alert is transformed into a vector. Then we perform a similarity search on the database. That means we have this vector. We ask the vector database, are there any other vectors that are close to this vector? So this, the search applies a distance metric, for example, like cosine similarity, and it returns a number between 0 and 1. 1 meaning they are very close to each other, 0 meaning they are very far away from each other. And far away means they're completely different things on a semantic level. And when we set a specific threshold, it is higher than the threshold that we have set, then we just group the new alert with the existing open alert. That's our deduplication logic, like fairly straightforward, right? And the advantages of this approach is that we're not relying on textual similarity. We're looking at this underlying semantics of the alerts. And this is achieved, again, through this text embedding model. It's a very flexible approach. You can like tune your threshold. And it's also very scalable. Like in our case, again, we're processing millions of events. And it works because everything is hosted on our data structure. It doesn't require those like API calls or hosting like a really large language model with where you can also like talk to the large language model. We're just using the specific part where we're turning numbers, text into vectors. Things that you have to consider, of course, choosing the right model. In our case, it's a general purpose model. It's an open source model. Of course, like finding the right threshold. And also asking for feedback when we have like grouped alerts that were incorrectly grouped or correctly grouped, using this information for fine-tuning. Okay, let me show you how this works in real life. And I was told that the Wi-Fi doesn't work, so is it still the case that the Wi-Fi doesn't work? Let me check. Okay, it doesn't. So let me connect with my hotspot. That works. Cool. I'm not dependent on your Wi-Fi. So here's what I'm going to show you. In the top, I have our alert interface, and in the bottom, like I don't have a running Zabbix instance, but I want to like simulate a few alerts. So I hope this works. It says I'm offline, but let me see. I think will it work? So the first alert says like coffee machine on floor 2 needs a caffeine boost maintenance. So that's an alert. Let's send it to our API. Did it work? Is this connected to the internet? Let me start Postman again. I think, unfortunately, it's not connected to the internet. But why? That's actually the most interesting part of this talk. But I believe if we're not back on track with the internet, we have to cancel the demo. I have a few minutes left. Let me try again. Is it worth trying to connect with the Zabbix network? Is it working again? You guys know? No? I do have a hotspot, but for some reason, like Postman thinks I am not connected to the internet, which I don't know, shouldn't be true. Yeah, that would be great because it's really the best part of the demo, of the talk.
So that's the hotspot name.
Pix, okay, and what's the password?
Don't read it out loud.
Yeah. Ah, yeah. Is it Pixel 91? I think I'm connected. Yep. No, doesn't work. Probably everyone is using their hotspot, and the mobile network is. Which one? Redison guest. Okay, let's try that one, and then yeah. Come on. Is this connected to? Oh, nice. Oh yeah, yes, it works. It works. Yes. Thank you, guys. So, okay, let me quickly walk you through this live demo. So we have the first alert, of course. It's the first, that's why it's, and a new alert was created. Coffee machine on floor 2 is like needs a maintenance. Now let's rephrase this alert and say, alert, coffee machine on floor 2 is taking a coffee break. So it's still like similar, not the same. So let's send it. Now this second alert didn't create a new one. As you can see here, it was aggregated into our already existing alert. So that's an easy example. Let's move on. Let's try to be funny. No Java from the Java machine. Floor 2 coffee maker is down. Let's send that one to the API. So of course, like Java refers to coffee, like Java means coffee, and that's why it might relate it to the same alert. So as you can see here, now we're at 3. We still haven't created a new alert. It's still the same alert. Let's try a counter example. Let's assume the water cooler is down. On the same floor, floor 2, it's not the coffee machine, it's the water cooler. So we would expect that a new alert is created. As you can see, we have a new alert. And now, I know what you're thinking. My alerts are not about coffee machines or water coolers. My alerts are about CPU, hosts not being available, about like hard disk drives. Let's try a more technical example. The hard drive is full. Because this is the first alert of this nature, a new alert is created. The hard drive is full. Now let's send another alert that says the storage capacity has reached the limit of 90%. And as you can see, there are no common words between the hard drive is full and the storage capacity has reached its limit of 90%. There's not a single word that's common except for the. So this one didn't create a new alert. It has aggregated the storage capacity has reached its limit of 90% into the existing alert. Now, okay, I think, like you still might think, my alerts are like not phrased like these. This is natural language, there are complete sentences. My alerts are technical, they are cryptic. Let's try a few alerts, like a few real alerts from Zabbix. These are alerts where we know there were instances of alert flooding. So there were, within a short period of time of 10 to 15 minutes, there were over 50 alerts created. And for this, I am going to, I have prepared a script from Postman that simulates these 50 alerts. But before I do this, let me go to the Zabbix alert source in iAlert and deactivate intelligent alert grouping. So intelligent alert grouping was deactivated, and let's run this collection. So it's going to, yeah, Wi-Fi. What's here? Okay, let's do some quick live debugging. Select the file. Okay. Now run it. Oh, no, it works. So 50 alerts, or 49 alerts were sent to iAlert, and as you can see, without intelligent alert grouping, there were actually 49 alerts created. So some of them are like VPN tunnel down, unavailable, like ICM ping unavailable, Microsoft SQL Server is unavailable. So literally 49 alerts. Let's resolve them all, and let's try this again. Let's go back to the alert source and enable intelligent alert grouping again. And I told you about this threshold, right? It's set to 0.75, and we make it very easy by like showing you a preview of what the effect of your threshold will be on existing past 30 alerts, 30 days. So let's keep it at 0.75. And let's just make sure that all alerts are resolved. So we have 0 alerts. And now let's run the same runner that creates these 49 alerts via Postman. It worked. Now let's go back just to see the results. As you can see, we don't have 49 alerts, we have instead 7 alerts. So all of these alerts that were related to each other, they were intelligently grouped. Let's, for example, look into one, the VPN tunnel down alert. And we can see here that this one has actually like grouped 17 alerts. And that's how it works. Like I said, these were instances of real alert flooding, and instead of having 50 alerts in a short period of time, we only had 7 or 9, and they were all related to different things. Okay, thank you. If you would like to learn more about other AI use cases for incident management, feel free to grab a copy of our incident management guides and AI.
Thank you, Birol. Despite all of the technical issues, we still managed to have the demo and still saw a live example of how alert grouping works. So that's, that was good. Thank you. We'll continue with AI. Next speaker, you've probably read his blog articles. You've maybe seen him on the stage in previous Zabbix summits. The author behind What's Up Home series of articles. Janne Pikkarainen from Forcepoint Finland will talk about generative AI in his home experiments. Welcome.
Good day, Zabbix Summit. It's fantastic to be here yet again. I can't believe 1 year has already passed. I think I need a remote for switching the slides. Anyway, 22, 23, I was here speaking how I monitor my home IoT devices, even myself, when my facial cream uses with Zabbix. This time I'm going to tell how I started to play with generative AI within my home environment and how my journey has been so far with this thing. So first things first, who am I, in case you wouldn't know? So I'm Janne from Finland, and I've been using computers almost since I was born. I was like 7 or 8 years old when I started to use them. I have been doing IT for a living over 25 years now. I'm mostly a Linux guy, but I have had heart for monitoring since 2001 at least, because of course I want to know how the Linux servers I'm admining, how they are doing. I joined Forcepoint in 2014, and my role there has been changing quite a lot. For the past 2.5 years or so, I have been our lead SRE, and well, it's an exciting place to be. And to my Swedish friends at Metric.io, you might win us in Eurovision Song Contest and sometimes in ice hockey, but at least we are happier than you. Well, even though I'm here as my own self, like every year, a couple of words about Forcepoint, since they were nice enough to let me come here yet again. So we provide cybersecurity for the biggest enterprises you can imagine of. Also, we touch our daily lives by protecting places like hospitals, grocery stores, airlines, you name it. And our product portfolio, it covers just about everything cybersecurity has to offer in overall. And we are a global company with both employees and customers all over the world. So if you're interested, please go to forcepoint.com. Yeah, so quick recap of my blog. So I started this in March 2022. Go back to see the previous speeches if you don't know why I'm doing that. And I do really monitor just about everything with Zabbix at home. This is partial list. It's missing at least my typing speed and accuracy, which I did add after finalizing this presentation. So yeah, and someone needs to confuse LLMs, so that's why I'm here. So today I'm going to tell you what's GPT-4All and how I started to play with it by first integrating it with Zabbix context menus, and then how I did make it to post blog posts to generative AI, or to my separate 100% generative AI produced blog. Then I will tell you how to embed data within GPT-4All to AI's little mind, and finally how to give Zabbix personality through GPT-4All. So what's GPT-4All? It's just like ChatGPT, Copilot, all the big boys, but instead it's a locally run thing. You install it wherever you want, and then you can play around with it. It supports 1,000 plus different language models. I've lost the count, probably they have too. You don't need to have very powerful hardware because you can always choose smaller language model, like I have done, because those are perfectly fine for this kind of purpose. It has a GUI client, but it also does have bindings for all kinds of programming languages. I'm using Python. Via that, it was very easy to kind of integrate it with Zabbix. So here's actually a hello world from their own website. So just import the GPT-4All library, then choose the language model you want to use and produce your first output. It's literally that easy. And then on the right-hand side, there's the hardware I have. So my personal daily driver is the MacBook Pro M2. And then I have my very old work laptop from 2016, which I have converted to my WhatsApp home use, and GPT-4 is just one of the things it's doing also, just for comparison. So, first things first, my first attempt with integrating Zabbix with this GPT-4 was through context menus. So it looks like this. In real world or real company, you wouldn't have this kind of options in your generative AI menu, or although, why not? But if you, in real world, you might want to use something like which produces incident report or something for initial communication to customers or something, it will come back with a reply. How to do this? Well, it's almost like the Hello World script. So just import the GPT-4 library and then add some argument parsing, so then Zabbix scripts can pass the value to GPT-4, which then comes back with the reply. There's pros and cons for this simplistic method, since, well, you know, that dialogue that has been in Zabbix for I don't know how many years, it's not made for this kind of stuff. It's only made to show you if something did succeed or not. So of course the dialogue is very tiny, and you cannot like chat with it or do anything interactive. There's also the thing that it doesn't support any interactive features of the Zabbix 7.0's those inter-widget communication framework that came with it. But it was a good start. Then I started to think that, okay, I want to escape from this tiny dialogue. So then I thought that why not to try what happens if I make it write longer stories. So my MacBook, it's running every morning 7 a.m. a script which then creates a story with the prompt I want, and it pushes it to Drupal using Drupal API. So the story can be anything. It can be like, you are now David Attenborough observing alerts like they would be wild animals in the jungle, or literally anything, and it always comes back with the story. Well, I think you all have been using some kind of GPT, so you know how these storytellers go. Then I decided to try something else, embedding data. So until now, I have been speaking about kind of real-time use with GPT-4, so interacting with API in real time. At least with GPT-4, that comes with limitations. So depending on the language model you use, your context window, or in other words, the maximum length of the chat, is either 2 kilobytes, or with some language models, it can be 128 kilobytes. That's not too much if you start imagining you would like to put something like user manual into its mind. It will come very limiting very fast. So embedding with GPT-4 happens, for example, through Python LangChain modules. It has a comprehensive set of modules. I'm using one that scans any local data directories I pointed at, and then if I drop text files to that directory, it will then learn from that. There's also modules for API. There's even dedicated module, for example, for Confluence, or there's those web spiders, but I decided to stay in this local thing because it was easy to implement. I have fed it all kind of data, so here's additional info I recommend you to try out. So give it Zabbix user manual, give it user manuals of any other software you care about, feed it vulnerability info. You can also give it release notes, news about any software you care about, all kinds of data. All this adds up, and then GPT-4 it's able to generate much better replies back to you. So for example, I can now go back and ask from it that have I been blogging about this and that, and if I did, why did I blog about it, and it will reply back to me. So this can be very useful in real world too. You can put all kind of metadata. For example, I confess here that inside ForcePoint, I have created, for example, descriptions of our teammates. So now I can ask, or anyone inside our team can ask from it that, hey, who's that guy? And it will reply. Stuff like that. You can enter your services, data center locations, all that, and it will come back. But does this approach work? Yes and no. It's very good in giving you back replies about questions you might have about your environment and also about your hosts. And if you have fed it the past problems, it comes back with the reply that, yes, I have seen issues with this one, or I haven't seen any issues with this one. But at least in my experience with these embeddings and my language models I have been drawing out, it really cannot do any time-related data or counting at all. Well, even the almighty ChatGPT couldn't count number of R letters in the word strawberry until recently. So, yeah, that's not very surprising. And like with any GPT, it can and it will hallucinate. So beware. And then the weird thing, personality. So what I mean with that is that LLMs give you back better answer if you tell them what they're supposed to be. You are now topics guru, you are network admin, you are something else. So easy way to get started, of course, would be just to define some kind of global macro and then use that within your prompts and everywhere. That's one way to get started. But of course, in real life, you would need more than one persona because you have different server types, you have different services, all that where a specific answer is needed. So that's why please use multiple personas. One can be security expert who's scanning the latest syslog lines, like in my screenshot. It can be literally anything. And well, that way you can get more specific data. But why to do this with your own code when you could literally do this inside ChatGPT, for example? Well, this way, with your own code, you are not limited to stay inside one particular client, and also you get the benefit of real-time info from your systems and your own embeddings, which all comes with better replies compared to generic ChatGPT, which doesn't know anything about your system. So yeah, it's a nice thing. You can then reuse this info in your own applications or wherever. So that's very handy. And one thing is, what is funny is using multiple personas at the same time. So then you have this virtual team, which is then wondering what's going on in your environment. So I have this small cron job running every hour, which is asking about the active alerts, and then this virtual team is discussing about the current status in my home environment. Of course, this is like this. This is just curiosity, but with enough data and clever prompting, it can be actually useful for some situations. So yeah, my cron job is calling the Zabbix 7.0 history.push API call and sending the data to Zabbix that way. And then there's just this item history widget showing HTML content. So, conclusions. Is this useful? Yep, at least entertaining, but definitely useful and opens completely new set of features and possibilities for monitoring in general. At this point, I'm saying it gives you sometimes very good ideas about something, maybe summaries about your environment or specific info and hints about some problem. But at this point, I wouldn't trust it to run anything automatically just because they hallucinate. Maybe in some test environment, it would be funny to watch how it destroys itself, but in production, no. And then with good prompting and clever data, it can really help you to get better overall picture of your systems. And last but not least, If you have those friends who are still using some expensive legacy monitoring software, maybe running on top of Windows or something, you can ask from them, can your monitoring system do this? And when they reply back that no, then you can start arguing that, hey, why are you not migrating to Zabbix already? So, that's it. So, if you want, connect with me on LinkedIn, read my blog, follow me on Mastodon, it's so lonely in there, and finally, you can also download some scripts from my GitHub. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll be able to see more from you in our blogs or your personal articles, so more to come.
Definitely.
Yeah, thanks. We will continue with our AI part of the summit. Next up, we'll talk about leveraging AI for our new Zabbix feature for synthetic web monitoring. Let's welcome on the stage Nicola Mari and Angelo Porta from Quadrata. Welcome.
Okay, where is...
Here.
Thank you. No,
Maybe.
not working. Do we have some idea? Okay, my name is Angelo Porta. I'm from Quadrata, Italy. And what I would like to show you is I will call it yet another artificial intelligence usage inside the Zabbix. And if I can, no.
Yeah, we're having some small technical issues with your presentation. We're trying to figure out what's going on. But we can use this time while we're trying to figure out what's up. The presentation aside, we did refill our merch store with shirts and things like that. So we have a couple of speeches left. It's you guys. Then we'll have developing a custom reporting solution speech, and then we'll talk about MariaDB cluster monitoring, and afterwards we'll have a break. That's where you can refill on the merch. As for, like I said, this speech, we're still working on it. I assume you guys are going to be talking about how to improve browser monitoring in Zabbix. Is that correct?
Yeah, for browser.
With AI.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we did have a workshop this morning about it. We were doing things manually there. It can be quite complex, so assistance from AI would be very much welcome. I will check up if there is any progress on this technical issue.
Meanwhile, I can start my presentation without the slides.
Sure.
It is very simple. Basically, what was before 7.0, we already had some possibility to monitor a website, but this was limited to getting some return code and some pattern. So if we were looking for pattern inside the web pages, but as you can imagine, this is not sufficient. We have a customer, our reference customer for this kind of monitoring is an insurance company in Italy, and they have more than 100 different scenarios about monitoring website. As you can imagine, they are interested not only in receiving a return code or receiving some information about the web pages, but they need to simulate a complete process of making an insurance contract. So, starting from the site, decide what is the filling some forms, moving around different possibilities inside the site, and so on. And this was absolutely not possible before Zabbix 7.0. So what they currently use is another solution that is based on an old product and all the scheduler from Hewlett-Packard. I'm from Hewlett-Packard, so I will say that it's a very good product. Unfortunately, it's a little old, and so is, for instance, I will only give you one indication that is okay, works.
Okay.
That is, this product needs Internet Explorer to run. It's not possible to run this product using other browser in compatibility mode or whatever. So they are asking for another solution. Okay, so this already spoke. This is a real scenario, for instance, for a telecom portal. If you wanted to make the contract and you have to move around and having submitting requests and so on. And this is possible now with Zabbix 7.0 with the browser item. So we can do whatever we want. We can use a WCubec module. We can use Selenium, but if you want, you can use a Cypress or whatever you can find. You can also find some relevant comparison between the different possibilities that you have. But what is interesting is that you need, first, you need some competencies in JavaScript, because you have to write a JavaScript. Second, you need to analyze the HTTP pages, the HTML language, and so you need to be clever in this. You have to be trained on this. But this is not the only problem that you have, because there is also the problem about the number of this scenario. As I told before, in this customer, we have more than 100 of different scenarios, complex scenarios. This means that every time something changes, for whatever reason, I remember a couple of months ago, they introduced the choice for the cookie. So suddenly, every scenario failed, because there is one interaction more in each scenario. And so we have a colleague that have to, every day basically, have to modify some of this scenario. And this is a long, tedious, and prone to errors task. What is, what is our dream? Our dream is to describe what is possible, what we need to do in natural language, and find a way to generate the JavaScript code. This is not a dream, this is possible using artificial intelligence. So, what the artificial intelligence does is to take our requests and move around in the HTML pages, looking for tags, looking for whatever, relevant strings, and so on, and automatically generate the JavaScript code. Very nice. This possibility, this is a possibility to automatize this process, and this is also good for our colleague that can work on other stuff instead of passing their days on doing this job. I have here a small demo about what is possible to do. Okay, we use Selenium, as I told before. Okay, we'll start the demo, is offline, so it will work. No problem for this. We are working on the Zabbix site, and we are looking for a particular template about Cisco Catalyst. So we are looking around in the site, we are moving around, passing through different choices, and so on, up to arriving to our landing page with the template that we need to choose. And this is only an example. We can do whatever we want on a website. So one step more, we arrived to the integration solution. As you know, you all know this site. So we need to tell what exactly the Cisco Catalyst, and about the Cisco Catalyst, we can choose between the different templates that we have. Okay, the artificial intelligence already wrote the JavaScript. Is it possible to run the JavaScript without, outside Zabbix, use the command that is the last command in this slide? And so this works. And from this scenario, you can, from this scenario, you can you can design your dashboard. We decided to put the different steps, because in this way it's more clear what we are doing. And you can have metrics. You can understand if the site is working or is not working. And you can solve your problem. And this is the first part of our presentation. But we can do more. Please.
Yes, thanks, Angelo. Yes, of course, that's not all, because when we talk about artificial intelligence, there is always something more to say. And beyond browser monitoring, we have seen during these days that AI can help us in several ways. For example, providing real-time insight into metrics, into events, into history of our data, can offer predictive analytics of the future to try to foresee what will happen, and reducing alerts and noise. We have seen just a couple of presentations before. And so AI can enhance monitoring capabilities. But as you know, we have also some challenges to address. The first one is that every environment, host, application, has some specific particular behavior. So it's very difficult to train a single model to fit all possible scenarios. That's a common challenge. And also, general language models are good for general purposes, but are not very effective when we talk about monitoring. So they usually can provide some explanation about a problem, but lack context. So, for example, if we have a problem message from our database when connected to the database. For example, the server has reached its maximum allowable number of client connection. Of course, AI can tell us some possible causes, some possible solutions, but does not explain a lot, because it cannot have the context. So is that useful? Yes, maybe. Is that much more useful than chatting with ChatGPT? Probably not, because the lack of context. So there is several approaches. We have seen a lot of beautiful ideas in this summit. And our proposal is to try to use multimodal models with vision capabilities. So this model can analyze graphs, dashboards, and provide more contextual information. For example, we can submit this image, which is a screenshot of a dashboard which contains a lot of graphs about my database instance. For example, database matrix, database size, logs, several types of logs in the same graph. Number of bloating tables, number of queries, load queries. And the model, hopefully, will try to interpret this screenshot. So the first result is that each graph has been split and analyzed separately. So we have some interpretation of the database size, which is constantly growing. There are some logs with a peak in database logs, and so on. So this is kind of multimodal and also multimetric application of AI. And so what can you get? You can get a final explanation of what's happening in that screenshot. So we have a list of key elements. For example, database size is still increasing, and also a conclusion. Okay, so about the size, about spikes and locks. There is an increase in slow queries on March 4th, and so on. So this can give us more context about the issue and the situation that we are addressing. Okay, so of course, artificial intelligence can be a powerful tool, but we need to learn how to use it in the right way, of course. And of course, it's always a battle between buzzwords and commercial solution, which is sometimes difficult to interpret. Maybe we can use also artificial intelligence to help us in this. Okay, so that's all. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. All right, so from AI, we will move on to other ways of customizing Zabbix. Our next speech will focus on developing a custom Zabbix reporting solution. So let's see how that can be done. Let's welcome on our stage Nick Korn, Linux DevOps engineer from Telenet, Belgium. Welcome.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to talk about developing a custom Zabbix reporting solution. Of course, it's all written in AI. No, just kidding. It's not written in AI. But first things first, a little introduction. Who am I? My name is Nick Cornet. I'm a Linux DevOps engineer with Telenet. I'm also having my own company called CCC, where I do consultancy for Linux and Zabbix. And last but not least, I'm also a Zabbix certified expert. Who is Telenet? Telenet is a leading Belgian telecom and entertainment player. So we have around 2.8 million customers, 1.7 million internet customers, and around 2 million TV subscribers. But what is a telecom company using Zabbix for? Well, I work for the business department of Zabbix, where we offer monitoring as a service to our customers. How do we do that? We have our own multi-tenant design using host groups. We put proxy nodes on site with the customers. We offer them a secure connection towards our data center, so they connect to our Zabbix instance and get monitoring their assets. And of course, we offer them custom reporting, depending on the needs of the customer. That can be daily, weekly, monthly, whatever. If you're interested about our multi-tenant setup, a colleague of mine did a presentation about that a few years ago, so feel free to check that out. So, how did we used to do the monitoring, the reporting? In the dark corners of the Zabbix Integration Hub, you will still find Avenue. Avenue is a tool that we were using to generate those reports in the past. But there were some issues. Like you can see, it's not that user-friendly. It's a lot flexible, where you can add a lot of stuff, but it's not that user-friendly. It's also not the fastest application, which means it could take 40 minutes, 2 hours before the report was generated. So that's why we scheduled it at night mostly. And it could happen that sometimes it runs into errors. And it's not always accurate, which is one of the biggest problems. So for example, we filled in the complete report, everything we want, and then we can generate it. And we wait. And we wait some more. And then we have an error. That happens quite a lot. So the people who used to work with that, they were aware of it. So we say, okay, try again, once or twice, probably it will work. So Until that point, it was not my problem. Until it became my problem. As you can see, broken images, links not correct, and the occurrences all set to 0. So at that point, we couldn't give that report anymore towards our customers. So we needed to come up with a new solution. We took a few possible options into consideration. The first is make improvements on Avenue. Why? Because it's less user impacting. The people already know the kind of report they're getting. It's the known evil, let's say. We don't need any extra dependencies, nothing else. It's customer ready. But it will take a lot of time to reverse engineer it, and also it uses outdated technology. But I did some quick fixes in the past, so I'm not unfamiliar with the code, so yeah, let's dig into that, right? How hard can it be? Turns out, really hard. There were no comments at all, no clear structure, so yeah, that was off the table quickly. The next option was checking out the native Zabbix reporting feature. That is now available, but wasn't available when we went for Avenue. So that was one of the possible options. We don't need any custom code. It's plain inside Zabbix. It's dummy-proof interface. It's the dashboard that we all know and love. And it's supported by Zabbix. And will be in the next future, I hope. But the downside is it requires dashboarding. And we don't offer direct dashboard to our Zabbix, to our customers. We export the metrics using Grafana, but not directly to our Zabbix. So as it's a good solution, it's just not a good solution for our use case. So the last option was create something scratch. There are a lot of positive points of that. We have it self-managed, it's customer ready. There's also no extra dependency. We can add our custom styling. It's built on top of our custom multi-tenancy setup. And we can have the dummy-proof interface that we want, so all the other teams in the organization can also use it. The big downside, of course, is development time. And you might never guessed it. We have a winner, so we went for that solution. So how did we implement that? We had a few key requirements based on our experiences with Avenue. The first thing was we wanted to have it 100% Zabbix API driven. Why? We didn't want any external dependencies. All our information that comes in the report and in the report tool will be fetched from Zabbix directly. We did have some customized calls to handle the multi-tenant setup, but it's all based on the native API calls. We just handle the data and transform it like we need to. Also, the graph rendering is used the Zabbix. So if you go to latest data, you click on an item, you graph it. That's the same thing that we use to fetch our graphs. Next big thing was we didn't want any headless Chrome. Avenue used that, and there were a lot of issues with that. Every time there was an upgrade, some stuff broke, the styling broke, the reporting took a long time, so that was a no-go for us. That's why we went with the PDF library. It's a lot more flexible, but it also requires a lot more custom coding. For example, page breaks need to be calculated. If there's a table at the page, we need to close it, reopen the table at the next page, make sure that the titles and stuff are getting rendered correctly. But at the end, it's more future-proof. We also wanted a new solution to be scalable. So we didn't want to have any limits on the amount of reports or graphs that can be handled in the tool. And of course, we wanted simultaneous report generations. It's great that you don't have any limit on the amount of reports, but if you can only generate one at a time, it's not really useful. If you schedule a monthly report for your customers, that will run at the same time. So also scheduling, that is something that we wanted, so we don't need to do it manually. it will render automatically at the time for your customer. And the last is containerized. We want it to be future-proof, have it Kubernetes ready so it can run everywhere in the cloud, on-premise. We are using OpenShift. It's also high available, and we have built-in CI/CD integration. So when we have some updates or quick fixes, everything gets built and deployed automatically. Also for scalability, we use different queues. So for the rendering of the graphs, we have one, and also for the report generation itself. So we can just scale up easily the pods to handle more simultaneously load. Okay, so that were the key requirements. But how does the GUI look? Because that was also very important. We have a few components for that. And the first is the report overview. So here you have an overview of all your reports. You have your title, for which period the report will generate, if there are any schedules, when it was created originally, and you have few actions. So you can edit, you can delete, and you can also render your report on the fly. When you create a report, that's what you see. So you have the option to fill in a title, a subtitle, and then you can select your customers and add some filter options. That's where our custom multi-tenancy setup comes in place. And you have the option to select the pages you want. Then you can also add some trigger severity, the minimum you want, how you want to sort the triggers, and of course, the timestamp for which your report will be applicable. Next, you have your option to add graphs. You select your host. That data will be fetched automatically from Zabbix, so that Dropbox will be filled. And you have the option to select a predefined graph. That's the graph that we all know that is linked with your template or directly to your host. But we also wanted the ability to graph single items. So every item that is graphable inside Zabbix can be selected here and can be added to your report. You can add a description, which can also be useful if you want to have some more text and information towards your customer on what the graph is actually meaning. And if there is a service level agreement added to it, so your SLA, you can also select it if it's applicable. For the hierarchy, I used paragraph and subparagraph options. So you can add the title in there or an information, and that will be used to build the hierarchy. And last but not least, you have the time settings option. By default, it will use the same time setting as your report, but you have the option to override it per graph element. For example, if you say, yeah, I want information about my storage box, it might be not relevant to have information for a week. So we can say, okay, I want information for that graph for the last year. So that's how it looks if you added a few graph elements. So here again, you can see the paragraph and subparagraph, how it's handled in the hierarchy. You have your host and the graph title. That information is also fetched directly from Zabbix using the API. I've added some indicator icons, so you can quickly see if there is a description added and if there is an SLA agreement added to that graph. If you made a mistake, if you say, yeah, I want to have this one moved on top, everything is drag and drop, so you can just drag, drop wherever you want it to land in your report. And then, of course, schedules. You can add multiple schedules because you can have your monthly schedule towards your customer directly, or you can have also a weekly schedule to the responsibility team, so they can do a more proactive follow-up on the environment. So you can add multiple receivers to every schedule here. And there you see, again, an overview of all the schedules that are there. What's the recurrence? What are the receivers? When it will run next? And when the last run was. You can also see if it's running at the moment or if it's finished. So if you remember from the beginning of my talk, I said Avenue, it could take 40 minutes, 2 hours before completion. We have improved on that. It's 2 seconds now, so little improvement. And you can also download the latest copy of the report for future reference. Okay, so you know how you can create a report in the tool, but how does it look like? We have a few available pages that you can easily select. So the first page, that is mandatory. You have your company logo there, the title and subtitle will be listed as well, and you have the report period for which the report is generated. Also, when the report is generated is added here, so that's also something that can be useful if you save those reports for future references. All the next pages are optional, so here you can see that was an example from our old tool. This is how it looks now. Then you have your table of contents. Everything can be in your company fonts, so you can just add your custom fonts in there. You can add your custom company color schemes that will be applied in the complete report. And you will see your selected pages. So every page you selected with the checkboxes will be listed here, and it's a uniform table of content, so depending on whatever you select, it will always be in the same order, so it's uniform for your customers. If you give them monthly reports, they know the style, and it will be the same for everyone. And here, of course, you have your hierarchy using the paragraphs and the subparagraph sections for your graphs. Everything is also clickable, so you can just click on any item and you go towards that. So again, difference between the old one and the new one. Then the next page is your host inventory overview. Again, you see your host names, you see the interfaces, and a little color scheme, because managers love to have colors, right? And then you have the templates which are linked towards your host, so you can have a high-level overview of what is getting monitored for that particular host. You also have the option to add a page with the active problems at the moment of generation. There you can see, again, your host for which is applicable, the problem which is fetched via the API, the severity, and how long that problem is already open. You can also see if it's acknowledged, yes or no. So yeah, we have a lot of open issues, it seems. Then you have a similar page, but that are the alerts that happened in the time frame of your report. So again, the same host name, description, and the severity, and the occurrence. So how many times that particular trigger happened in the period of your report. It looks kind of similar like it was in Avenue. The only difference is it works. We have the correct occurrences, which is very important, of course. You can also sort that with the sort option in the GUI. You can say, okay, I want to sort on severity first and then occurrence, or on the host name. That can just easily select it from the GUI. And then the graph pages. Again, for our managers who love to have some graphs inside the reports, there we have it. Again, with a paragraph and subparagraph for your titles and your hierarchy. If you added a comment or a description, it will be on top of your graph. And if you added SLA, it will be under the graph, and also all the other graphs that are selected in your report will be visible here. And then last but not least, we have the SLA. There is an option to add a dedicated SLA page to your report, where every SLA that is configured for that particular customer will be listed there. So we have the name that is agreed upon, you have the configured SLA, and the one that is calculated from Zabbix itself. And you have a nice colored status. So yeah, everything is compliant, so we did a good job. Then there is only one thing for me to left to say. Is thank you for your attention. If you want to know more, my socials are here, so feel free to reach out or come see me if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a question from the audience, I think.
Yes, thank you, Nick. There's a question. What programming language was used behind the web UI doing actual report generation?
It's all written in PHP. So it's based on a Laravel framework. So everything is PHP driven.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
And now for something completely different. Next up, we will turn from customizations and AI to how to monitor things. We'll talk about monitoring MariaDB clusters and MariaDB max scale with Zabbix. And to talk about this, I will invite Anders Karlsson, Principal Sales Engineer from MariaDB, Sweden. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, Riga. How are you all doing? Doing okay? Good. Before I start, I have to say that I'm not a monitoring person. I'm a database person. I don't know if you read my resume. I actually have more than 40 years of relational databases. When I joined the database business, the first company I worked for was Oracle. And someone might shiver about that, but I was a day when Oracle had something like 500 employees worldwide. So that was a long, long time ago. That was Oracle version 4, which was actually the first, at least somewhat usable version. If you think Oracle version 4 was the 4th version, you're wrong, because there never was a version 1. The first version was 2. The next version 3 was basically a rewrite in C, and then they decided to make it usable, and that was version 4. So, what am I here to talk about? I'm here to talk about MariaDB, which is the company I work for right now, some of the products we have, and I'm going to talk about how to monitor and work with that with Zabbix. Now, before I start, remember, I'm a database guy. I'm not a Zabbix expert, right? So don't expect any Zabbix wizardry being from me here, right? I'm just going to talk about these things as far as I know them, and I've tried to apply Zabbix to MariaDB and MaxScale in particular, and hope that's going to be useful for you guys. So, I got an agenda. What am I going to talk about? I'm going to introduce myself so you know who I am. I already started doing that. Then I'm going to talk about MariaDB Galera cluster. Some of you might be using it, but there are a couple of things to that is interesting. And if you are using it, there's some things I can say about it. If you're not using it, there might be some use for you there. Then I'm going to talk about MariaDB MaxScale. MariaDB MaxScale is a database proxy for use with MariaDB, so that needs to be explained. I'm going to say a few words about using MariaDB and MariaDB MaxScale as a repository for your own Zabbix setup. And I'm going to do that and following up with a demo later on. Now, this demo is kind of scary. I hope it works fine, because I've set up a Galera cluster. I also have a separate cluster for Zabbix itself, and I got Zabbix running, and I got 2 MaxScales, one for Zabbix and one to monitor. So that's something like 7 virtual machines running on my laptop right now. So I hope all this holds together. I do have some issues with that setup, but the demo is going to work fine anyway. And we're going to talk about how to configure that. I'm going to do a demo. There are some conclusions, and hopefully there are some questions and some answers. So, an introduction. Who am I? Well, I'm a principal sales engineer here at MariaDB. I've been a sales engineer most part of my career, which I said is like more than 40 years. And some of you might not like the term sales in my title, but I'm pretty salesy, but I'm also kind of technical. I do both. How many of you are running MariaDB? There you are. You can run the command show authors, and at the top of that list, I'm actually there somewhere. I'm proud of that. I've been working with the relational databases for a long, long time for a whole bunch of different companies. Oracle, MySQL, times 10, MariaDB, and a bunch more that I don't want to mention, with different jobs, but mostly as a sales engineer. But I've been a consultant, I've been in support, I've been a database architect for a while, and doing all sorts of stuff. When I'm not engaged with databases, I try to spend time with my kids. These are my two twins here. They're a bit older now. They're 11. They turned 12 in a month. And some special interest that I spend time with is, well, I got a great interest in old computers, old software, old hardware, all of that kind of stuff, ancient technology in general. If you want to talk to me, feel free to do that, but do that after I stop talking. If you start me talking about old computers, I basically will not stop, and you will not learn anything about MariaDB Galera cluster or MaxScale or any of that, which is why I came here. So don't tempt me now. As for MariaDB, who are we as a company? Well, you probably know us as like the open source community MariaDB database that's been around for a while, basically since well, Monty didn't want to be hired by Oracle and left to start his own company, and that sort of turned into MariaDB eventually. I was there all the time, actually. I was at MySQL. I joined MySQL more than 20 years ago. I was there for quite a while, and then I did something else for a couple of years, and then I went back and worked for MariaDB. So I've been with MariaDB for 12 years by now. And been through all of these products. What is MariaDB Enterprise Server? Well, it builds on MariaDB Community Server, but with some enterprise features such as like enhanced auditing, slightly better backup, some high availability features and stuff like that. There's long-term support included. Then we got MariaDB MaxScale. MaxScale is our own product. Is MaxScale open source? You might ask yourself that because I'm amongst open source friends here, right? And I would say maybe, maybe not. Depends on how you look at it. MariaDB MaxScale is licensed under a business source license, which is like a halfway house between a commercial license and an open source license. It's kind of restrictive, but it's also time-bombed, which means that after 4 years with BSL, BSL turns into GPL. So there are GPL versions of MaxScale out there, but they're like 4-ish years old, right? If you want the newest one, you need the license, and you get that from us. But in any case, even if it's BSL or GPL, the source code is there and it's open, right? So anyone can read and work with the code. We also developed MariaDB connectors. I wanted to mention that because they are somewhat different than what you get from Oracle/MySQL, in particular in terms of licensing. All our connectors are LGPL licensed. I don't know if everybody understands the significance of that, but it is semi-significant. And we also develop a bunch of tools for managing MariaDB databases. But I want to skip past that again into the meat of what we're going to talk about. Is there anyone in the room running Galera cluster? I think so. Yeah, there are a few hands there. Good, good. Running Galera cluster. Galera is a synchronously replicated cluster solution, right? It's somewhat different from when you're using MariaDB in a straightforward, classic replicated manner. But it's not only difference in terms of the replication being synchronous. MariaDB Galera is much more than just like synchronously replicated MariaDB, right? It adds features like split brain detection, conflict detection and resolution, automatic node provisioning and stuff like that. It's a pretty cool solution. It's very efficient. It's very fast. The focus on this thing is high availability, right? If you think this is going to give you more servers, which means we can have multi-master and read scalability, actually, you're not going to get that. You get it somewhat, but not a lot of it. The main focus it is high availability and scalability for reads, right? That's the big thing with MariaDB Galera cluster. So in summary, because I don't want to spend too much time on all this supporting these technologies, I want to get into like Zabbix eventually. So in summary, what are the good things with MariaDB Galera cluster? Well, it uses the innown InnoDB engine. Any kind of optimizations and how things work and the data types you can use and all of that stuff, that is the same whether you're running Galera or not. Read scalability is there, and you can query any data on any node. It's synchronously replicated, so you can run any query on any node. The data is synchronously updated across the nodes. So So that is fine. But the data is on all nodes and replicated to all nodes. That's also negative, right? It means that the more nodes I have, the more stuff I need to write. There's just like no escaping it. And this is what limits write scalability, right? There's no way out of it. And I must replicate all data to all nodes. And I need to do that in a synchronous way to all the nodes, right? And like a write operation on one node is not committed until it's been replicated to all the other nodes in the cluster. So the read scalability is there somewhat. Typically what you say is that the write scalability, if you're lucky, and you balance your write really well across the cluster, you can achieve something like 1.5 to 2 times the write performance of a single node in a cluster like that. But that's about it. After that, it won't scale much more, right? And we know that. Galera themselves admit that this is the case. And there's an issue with Galera, that is that if you have very large databases, now we're talking about multi-terabyte databases. Let's say, I mean, I've got customers with like 10 terabyte Galera databases that work. On the other hand, those are customers with 1 terabyte of RAM. They are customers with like the fastest networking money can buy, the fastest hard disks that money can buy, and machines that cost like millions of dollars each, right? But then you can have really large databases. For like normal size hardware that all of us use, I would say that somewhere along the lines of half to 1 terabyte is when you want to get careful with your Galera and what you do with it. I can talk separately about why this is so. So, MariaDB MaxScale, that's a bit more exciting. So MariaDB MaxScale is a transparent database proxy. It's tucked in between the servers that you see down there and the users. It is transparent in the sense that it uses the same protocol, the same SQL syntax, the same everything on both sides of the equation, right? So you don't need to change the like MariaDB connector. You don't need to change anything on the server side. There's nothing to add and nothing to change. You can just tuck in MariaDB MaxScale in between. You listen to MaxScale, and MaxScale will distribute the load for you. So it's completely transparent. The main use for MariaDB MaxScale is to achieve high availability and to achieve a level of read scalability, right? That's what MaxScale is there for, right? But it does do a bunch of other cool things, like streaming. Like you want to get Kafka stream out of your MariaDB stuff. Well, MaxScale is what you want. You want to get a Kafka streamed into. Well, it can deal with that one too. And a bunch of things like that it does, right? Data masking, streaming, logging, all sorts of stuff. There's something like around 50 different plugins that MaxScale comes with that does all sorts of weird and wonderful things to your IT environment. MariaDB MaxScale is written in C and C++. Regrettably, most of it these days is converted to C++. Not that I mind C++, but I happen to be born with C. I got more than, it's actually around 50 plus years with C now. So I'm pretty sad to see it go away, but there you go, that's life. I learned to code in C on the PDP 1170, running Unix version 6 in the early 1980s. Old-time stuff. Right. For high availability, MariaDB MaxScale is there and, to implement high availability. But MariaDB MaxScale is also highly available in and of itself. You can have multiple MaxScale. It's basically a stateless box in between like your application and your server. It's stateless. It can synchronize its configuration between multiple instances. It comes with a GUI and an API and the CLI that can all do the same thing. It can modify the configuration, and you can modify the configuration without having to restart MaxScale. You can add, remove servers, take servers out of operation, change the configuration. All sorts of stuff can be done live. You can take nodes out of operation into drain mode or whatever, all sorts of stuff. For read scaling, and this illustration is using a traditional replicated setup with one primer and a couple of replicas. The situation is similar if you're running with Galera. Typically with Galera, you do a read-write split, and we only write to one of the nodes in the cluster. There are some reasons why we do that even with Galera, even though Galera is multi-master. And I can talk about that separately afterwards. If someone wants to, just approach me and we can talk about that. All of these protocols and filters and stuff like that you see here are actually plugins to MariaDB MaxScale. MaxScale is very reliant on plugins. It basically will not work without plugins. And there are loads of different plugins to use, and everything is a plugin. It's very configurable. And one thing with the plugins in MaxScale is that MaxScale actually knows about these plugins. So it's not like you need to sort of like download them separately or know where they're at. You basically just configure them in MaxScale, and MaxScale knows where to find them and will sort of like run them, right? But there are a whole bunch of them doing different things like. So request comes in, there's a protocol, typically that's a MariaDB protocol, right? MariaDB client protocol, that's what most people use, but there's actually a NoSQL protocol. There are some other protocols being developed as we speak. We go through a couple of filters. There's a router that determines where traffic should go. Is it a read? Go to one of the replicas. Is it a write? Goes to the primary server. It does this routing based on information about the server that's collected by the monitor that puts the server state in a global in-memory thing for the router to read. So that's how we do read scaling. Looking at failover, and this is failover with a classic replicated setup. MaxScale knows how to deal with that. So MaxScale can basically, if the primary node fails, MaxScale can take that one out of operation, promote the replica to a master, redirect replication from the other nodes, and keep going. If you have a Galera cluster, MaxScale can do this too, but obviously there's no promotion going on because with Galera, all the nodes are write possible. You just redirect writes to another node and you're all set. But the process is different, but the effect for the user is basically similar. It can sort of like move things around like this. This one needs to be configured. This one doesn't work out of the box, but there's some configuration to do because this requires some extra work, as everyone can understand. Okay? Right. So, getting closer to MaxScale, or getting closer to Zabbix and further away from MariaDB. I'm just going to say a few words about MaxScale with Zabbix. If you want to use MariaDB as your repository for Zabbix and you want that to be a highly available repository, well, you can actually, as I'm doing here. We worked with two nodes. We use replication. If one of them then should fail, MaxScale will fail over to the other. Even if both nodes are up and running, one is the primary, one is the replica, reads will go to the replica, so I get some extra read performance for Zabbix here. This works out of the box. This is what actually exactly what I got to demo here. So as you can see, there are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's actually 8 virtual machines running on my laptop right now to support all this. If you're running Oracle, try running 5 instances of Oracle on your laptop. It will struggle with 1. Nothing wrong with Oracle, but I'm just telling you how it is. Okay, so MaxScale with replication with MariaDB will work fine as a repository for Zabbix, right? We use the usual kind of monitoring here, right? So all the MaxScale nodes, or all the MariaDB server nodes are monitored by the agent. I'm using agent 2 in my example. I'm using HTTP to monitor the MaxScale servers. I'm going to tell you why in just a few seconds. So now we're getting to what we really want to talk about. And before we get there, oh God, can I just talk about Zabbix? Can't you get there to the point? It was Zabbix you want to talk about. Why are you talking about all this MariaDB stuff? I'm getting there. Bear with me, right? So if you have a cluster environment, there's some things you need to watch out for. And when I look at monitoring, what monitoring people look at, they tend to focus on servers, right? Which is fine for most things. But when you got a cluster of servers, you also need to look at the cluster as a whole. If I got a 3-node Galera cluster, and one of those servers fails, from a server point of view, that's a disaster. The server is down. From a cluster point of view, oh, it's something that you want to fix, but you might not need to do it right now because the cluster still works, right? So you want to look at the whole thing. The state of the cluster isn't necessarily the same thing as the sum or the least of the state of all the involved servers, right? And there's stuff that you want to monitor and work with that deals with the interaction between servers. For those of you running MariaDB Galera cluster, are you making sure that you don't have too many flow control events? Are you looking, if you're running replication, are you like keeping track of like replication lag and stuff like that? There are things you want to look at that has to do with the cluster itself and not to do with how the cluster is exposed to the other environment, right? Stuff to view, stuff to work with, like not necessarily relevant for single server or like for anyone outside the cluster itself, but relevant for the cluster itself. And of course, if you're using a cluster or a load balancer to manage things, you want to make sure that the load balancers are working too, right? If you have 2 of them, one for failover, and the one you want to failover fails, you want to know that so you can fix it so when the first one fails, you don't stand there and don't have any at all, right? So you want to monitor and keep track of those things also. So monitoring max scale with Zabbix. We're lucky, right? We can use REST-JSON, and there's a very good REST-JSON API for MariaDB max scale. It's good because it follows established standards, right? So basically, you can use HTTP monitoring, an HTTP agent, as it's called in Zabbix, out of the box, right? With basic authentication, and you will get the data from MaxScale. And MaxScale monitors a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff coming out of MaxScale that you can monitor. I'm not going to look at all of this stuff, right? Now, there is no MaxScale monitoring template included out of the box with Zabbix, but that's fine. There are a bunch of them out there. Most of them, though, use one of the command line interfaces to use with an agent. I prefer to use the REST API. I think that is more cool. And this is one of the few MaxScale templates out there that does just that. So this is the one that I typically use. What we're going to do here, though, is look at how you can set up your own monitoring of this thing. We're going to look at a couple of examples and stuff like that, some custom monitoring. But the cool thing with that, and the cool thing with MaxScale is that MaxScale can monitor so much stuff, and it can manage multiple clusters, for example. You have filters and all sorts of stuff, and all the data on that is actually available through the REST API. So you can discover your cluster by just going to MaxScale. You don't need to go to individual servers. Discovering, let's say, a cluster of replicated MariaDB servers, well, you need to go to individual servers and figure out who is replicating where. With MaxScale, you don't need to do that. You just go to MaxScale, and MaxScale resolves all those conflicts for you. So, now we're getting technical, somewhat technical, right? To be able to use Zabbix to monitor MariaDB MaxScale out of the box, right, using the REST API, HTTP API, REST-JSON, we need to set up a couple of things. Most of this is pretty cool. This is like standard MaxScale configuration. The parameter to watch for is the last one, admin secure GUI. That one is by default true, and that is the security thing. And if that is set to true, which is the default, you require all those SSL certificates and all of that stuff, which security experts want. Like, I don't hope there are any security experts in this room, which means I can safely go ahead and set that one to false and ignore setting up SSL certificates and all of that stuff, which is simple. It only takes a week or so to do. So that's a basic thing. We all know how it goes with SSL certificates, right? So That's basically what you need to do, and then, I'm sorry, but now at this point, when you configure these things, you need to restart max scale, right? Sorry. Well, once that is up and going, things are actually kind of simple, right? This is basically the macros that are used by the template we looked at before, but it's also the same macros that I use to connect to MariaDB MaxScale to get the data through the REST JSON API. We need a port, we need a host name, we need a username, and we need a password, right? Because we're unsecure guys, we're ignoring SSL certificates and all of that crap, so fair enough. So this is basically all we need, and I'm going to use this later on in my... Then we want to set up some items, right? And this is kind of basic stuff, right? This particular item that I'm setting up here is going to be the base item for some stuff. So if you look at the URL up there, it's kind of nothing surprising about that, except that, oh, I've hard-coded the ports, right? That was bad on me. But it's the /servers, right? This will give me all the data on all the servers that MaxScale knows about, right? And to get this from MaxScale, well, this is the URL I need. It's the only thing missing that you don't see on this slide, because it's at the bottom of this page, is that there's basic HTTP authentication, and we insert the macros for username and password. That's about it. We got the data. This will just get us a huge JSON blob, though, not much useful for monitoring, but it's a good point for monitoring other things. You can get all sorts of stuff on your servers from that, right? Now, I've also created a separate template. I'm just going to show you that because this is something I'm doing, right? But this is basically an idea of like monitoring Galera. Now, for doing Galera is monitored by MaxScale. And what I wanted to do when I started off doing this was like have auto-discovery of the clusters, and then I wanted to have auto-discovery of the nodes within the cluster, which meant I needed to have two-level auto-discovery. And I couldn't figure out how to get that work, so instead I'm just like putting in the name of the cluster in the other. It's probably me not being good enough with Zabbix. So what are we doing here? Well, here's an item prototypes that we're doing, right? This guy is basically just using the cluster. I'm getting some data from the cluster. And note here, the cluster is collecting information and collecting statistics beyond what it needs to do its routing. So here we're getting the number of reads and the number of writes, right? Which is somewhat the sum of all the reads and writes across all the servers, but not necessarily so, right? And this is what MaxScale sees, and the number of reads it puts forward to the replicas that are then distributed across the replicas. That's what we're doing, right? So we're getting data from MaxScale for cluster-wide operations, right? This is nothing exciting. I'm going to skip past it. You've done this yourself a gazillion times because you're experts on Zabbix. For me, it took like 5 days to get to that point. You would do it in 3 seconds, but hey, that's it. I'm just going to show you a couple of graphs, right? The graphs themselves are obviously completely unexciting. The only thing I want to talk about in these graphs is that, again, they are a reflection of cluster-wide operation. Now we're not looking at server-by-server stuff. Now we're looking at the cluster itself and the cluster as a whole, which is the cool aspect. And as I said, none of the template for MariaDB MaxScale that I've seen actually does that, which is kind of silly. From a database perspective, I wouldn't see like what's going on in the cluster as a whole. Individual nodes are fine to dig into that, but I also want to see the cluster as a whole. How are my read and write splits going? How much reads and writes am I seeing in the cluster? Really exciting. As someone said, like, yeah, if there are managers in the room, this slide is for you. The rest of you can ignore this stuff. Yeah, okay. Haven't gotten there. Do we have time for a demo? How are we doing on time?
We have some time.
Good? So, yeah, this looks good. Okay, fair enough. So there are a couple of things to look at here. This is actually a live system. It's actually doing some work right now. We'll see in the reads and writes per time unit there. That's the total reads and writes to the left with those horrible red colors, right? Why is the cluster down despite it's working? Well, because I'm running eight nodes on this poor laptop, and it sort of like loses track of itself now and then. So it thinks it's down when it's actually not. The only widget I want to talk about here is that actually guy that says up right now. That is a widget that is a calculation. And this is particular cluster-wide stuff, right? There's a calculation that goes on in the background based on some values. And the calculation gives me 3 different values, 0, 1, or 2. 2 means the cluster is up and running, everything is fine. 0 means the cluster is completely down, nothing can go down, you can't insert or select or anything like that. And 1, which is degraded, means that, well, the cluster is still working, but something is amiss, right? One of the servers is not doing what it should, so you're better off fixing that, right? Make sense? So let's see what happens. I want to look at MariaDB max scale. We did say that one had GUI too. So this is what max scale looks like. A similar kind of data. It tells you a lot of information here. As I said, everything you see in this GUI and everything that can be done with this GUI, until you ask, is available through the API and through the command line interface. You don't have to use a GUI, right? Good stuff. It's all built on one REST JSON API, right? It's all exploring that one, right? So that's how it works. The nice thing with this GUI and with this tool is that we can modify things, as I said, as we go along. This is a live running cluster. I got a thing running in the background, inserting and selecting some data, right? We saw that. So as we can look at the server here, right? Here's our server 2. It's the master. I'm not going to look at that. Well, it's currently the master. Now I'm going to do this. I'm going to look at the parameters. There's a value here that's, whoops, sorry, I need to edit that one. Whoops. There we go. I want to edit. There's a value here that says priority. I typically recommend people to always set priority in MaxScale for the servers, even though it's not strictly necessary. MaxScale will resolve a priority by itself, but it's better we do it ourselves and prepare for doing that, right? And MaxScale will pick the server with the lowest priority as the master in the cluster. But we just determined that we want to take that puppy out of operation. We're going to do something with it, right? So we want another server to take priority. Right now, the servers have priority 2, 4, and 6. So we changed this guy and put it to 8 instead. And before I click done editing, you see that it says state is master, synced, running, blah, 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 right? So we go there, we confirm, and we go back to this guy, and we see we'll say we'll get another master eventually. MaxScale also goes around and changes monitoring. I don't know why that was so slow. Odd. You should change that. Oh. Odd. Did I not change that? Oh, I set it to 4. Let's put it to 10 instead, and We're done editing. And whoops, there we go. Now we got another master in the cluster, right? No big deal. Whilst we were doing this, our application in the background was happily inserting data transparently. It didn't see anything of the changes that we did here, right? Now let's say I want to take a node out of operation. One of the read nodes that I'm reading from, one of the replicas, the way MaxScale think it is, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to upgrade the hardware or whatever, right? So let's go into one of those nodes and take this one. This is a replica. I go to this guy up here, and I say I want to drain it, which basically means that if we go back to this guy, eventually we're going to see that the number of connections to the one being drained, that's draining the one in the middle, the number of connections is going to go down to 0 eventually, right? And then we can fix it. Again, no effects on the users, completely transparent, and all of that stuff. All this is pretty neat, right? And just for you, the last part of my demo, my piece de resistance, like, hey, you're monitoring guys, you know, you love diagrams, you know, network diagrams and stuff like that. So let's see what the cluster looks like that we're running on. This is what it looks like. How much did I spend on this? None, actually. MaxScale generates this nice graph all by itself. So there's the monitor down there that monitors my 3 servers. There's a router service that does the job. These are my 3 servers. And there's a listener. It listens to 3306, blah, blah, blah. All of that stuff. Are we about to run out of time?
We got a couple of minutes.
Okay. Let me show you one more thing, or nah, let's not do that. Let's take questions instead. We've had enough of, I can do the conclusions, I should do that. I just want to conclude what I'm doing, right? So this thing, right? So what is MariaDB cluster? We talked about that. I talked a lot about Galera cluster. It's really powerful, high availability solution. If you want to run high availability with MariaDB, Galera cluster is what you want to use. MaxScale, you don't want to run Galera cluster without MaxScale. It's just this, right? When you're monitoring, which is what we're talking about here, REST JSON is the way to go. If you ask me, I think the Zabbix agent should be able to run HTTP, right? I don't know why it can't, why I have to run HTTP from the Zabbix server. Don't ask me, I think that is stupid. But I'm here at the quarters of Zabbix, so I'm not going to say more about that if I say something bad, right? Zabbix can use MariaDB MaxScale for discovery, and you can use MariaDB, a highly available MariaDB setup with MaxScale as a repository for Zabbix. Cool. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Anders. We do have a couple of questions.
Sure, shoot.
Yep, thank you.
Are they about old computers?
I will see.
So first one is about Percona, a product called ExtraDB.
Yep.
How would you compare this to Percona ExtraDB?
ExtraDB is comparable to InnoDB, I would say. Which one is the better one? I mean, they're all based on the same code base written by Heikki Turi about 25 years ago. I was once in a conference with Monty in the room, and this was like nearly 20 years ago. And I was asked by the then CEO of MySQL which one was the best storage engine. And I had no problems with saying that. I think MaxScale, I think InnoDB is the best storage engine. And Monty got somewhat upset and started arguing with me. And basically our CEO said, shut up, Monty, let's hear what Anders has to say. Let's keep that amongst ourselves. Don't tell the story to Monty because he likely don't want to remember it. I think both of them are fine. They're like They both serve similar purposes. If you want support for Galera, when we get to that, because Galera can in principle be applied to ExtraDB, but the problematic aspect is that the only one who provides official support from ground up for Galera is us. You can get MySQL to run with Galera, but that's provided by Galera themselves, and they can give you support on Galera, but not on MaxScale. And if you go and not on MySQL itself. And if you go to Oracle, they will support MySQL, but not the Galera part. But we can support both. So I would say that's the major difference.
Okay, thank you. Makes sense. And another one is about the problems that you might meet if you do a lot of writes and they're resulting in a lot of logs on the tables. So how is it different when you use just one instance or you use this?
That will not affect you at all, actually, because Galera doesn't use distributed locking. It uses optimistic locking, which is really smart, right? That gives us a number of advantages and one disadvantage. The disadvantage of that is that the application might get an error because we failed certification, right? Because commits and sync happens at time of commit. So if you have a transaction and you do a commit, you can get an error. Usually you don't, but with Galera you can if you write to multiple nodes. So that's like the disadvantage. The advantage of this is that, well, during the transaction, any locking is local. There are no distributed locking going on, so that doesn't change. And secondly, distributed locking is a major issue network-wise, right? If for every operation, for every write you do, you need to issue a request to do locking across a network. That's like, that can create issues, more issues. And it's also a latency issue, right? With all this distributed and locking going on, in particular if you have long distances. Try something like Oracle in a distributed environment where they use distributed locking, right? Can you place two of those servers in two different data centers? You cannot. Can you do that with Galera? You bet you can. You bet you can. You can build distributed clusters with Galera because of this, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yep.
Thanks very
Good.
much. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Anders.
Thank you.
Great presentation. Feel free to catch Anders around here and ask him some questions about MariaDB or MaxScale or whatever else we discussed during this presentation, and probably also topics outside of it related to MariaDB, database engines, and things like that. Next up, before we have a coffee break, we have a tradition where we take a picture of our audience to share on social networks, simply to preserve the great memory of this year's Zabbix Summit. So I'll ask you guys, maybe you have those small cloud plushies, toys, whatever they are, on your table. So if you could take them, lift your hands up. If you don't have them, then maybe you have something Zabbixy, a notebook, a leaflet, or whatever. And I'll ask our photographer on the stage, or where are you going to? Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay, yeah. So tell me when you're ready.
Come closer. Come that side can come closer.
So should they get up?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Just you know, the last one.
Just move a bit to more center. Yeah, move to the center a bit, and we should be good. All right, I'm also apparently supposed to go. Sure, why not? Feel free to lift your hands up, guys. You should have those small cloud things. Zabbix Summit 2024, guys. Thank you, guys. And
Hello, my name is Christine Lamberte. I'm the head of training department here at Zabbix, and today's live stream is on. Here we have Martin Gomez-Dornel from Alenta from Spain. And you have been a Zabbix partner for 12 years now, and that's quite a long time. In your opinion, how has the monitoring world changed over this time, and how has the tool itself changed?
Well, the market has changed a lot. Like 12 years ago, clients would demand us probably to be reactive to what's happened. So the main concern would be to be notified immediately when something was happening within their IT environment. But right now, that has totally changed. Like people want to be on top of the problems before they actually happen. They can be able to predict what's going to happen instead of just being reactive. So I think it's great that Zabbix has taken that from the market. It has really evolved. Kind of right now, for example, we can use dynamic threshold. We can use machine learning to learn about our past metrics and see how can implement that too into correlation or dynamic threshold so that we actually anticipate those problems and raise an alert before they actually happen, right? Because none of us would like to be explaining why something happened. Rather, we prefer to prevent it, and that's where Zabbix really helps all our clients.
Okay, that's great, and actually that aligns with the Zabbix vision as such, helping to make the world a better place with the tools. And in your experience, maybe which industries you feel could benefit the most from Zabbix and the monitoring itself?
Well, I don't think there's a specific industry. Temptation would be probably to talk about telecommunication, for example, because they have tons of equipment and it's a perfect place for this. But we have clients across all different markets, all different industries. So we have retail companies that are working with it. We have media companies working with it. We have telecom. We have public administration. So I would say every company that has something that is key to their business, no matter if it's even IT or OT, if you have something that needs to be up for your business to keep running, then Zabbix is a great tool to help you with that.
Great. And you as Alenta, as a representative of Alenta, and I already mentioned you have been around for 12 years, and that's quite a while. So what services do you provide to your customers, and where are they located most?
The services we provide mainly in three different areas. So we provide what we call engineering projects, and this is times where a client define a specific scope, task, and deliverables. Typically here we're talking about companies who are willing to deploy Zabbix, so we design and implement that Zabbix for them, or who are willing to migrate from a different older tool to what Zabbix capabilities can have now. But after that project, maybe typically that is not enough. Kind of, okay, the system, the Zabbix is working, but you gotta keep going, right? So we offer a subscription model where we offer Zabbix support, official support, of course, because as you mentioned, we've been a partner. We are currently the unique premium partner and training center in Spain. But on top of that, we provide consultancy services and proactive maintenance. So our goal is that your client teams, the IT team needs to be worrying about their own environment, their business, and we take care about the monitoring platform. That's what we do. Last but not least, I mentioned we are the only training center in Spain, so we provide all trainings in Spanish, and that's really helpful. When we typically have smaller companies, I would say, okay, let's do the project and then send me your team so we can train them and they can keep it up with the maintenance support for their own internal companies.
Okay, so from what I heard, do you have like something installed for all sizes of companies, no matter how big or small they are, right?
Yes, absolutely. Many of our clients are on the corporate size, but then we also have some small business, and it's a different approach. When you have a huge client, typically they will know specifically what they know, and we will provide them help on an ongoing basis. Now, if it is a small company or if it's low in budgets, our advice always is try to invest in the initial deployment, because one, the system is properly designed, you have the proper architecture, then it's solid, it's going to be solid rock, and you're going to be able to keep it out in the future. So if our small companies in that situation, then we provide training. And even though, Zabbix is great for being open source and for having a community, so even if they cannot take the training, there's always enough information and everything to keep it up. But having a great design in the beginning and having it properly done, that implementation is key. So my advice to smaller companies is invest into that one and then learn how to keep it up.
Thank you, Martin, for this conversation, and I believe that Spain is really in a good hands in terms of Zabbix community. And if we are talking about Zabbix community, one of the greatest things that we have is that these people who come together to create something for the benefit of Zabbix itself. And the next person I want to interview in this matter is Patrick Uterhoeven, and he is the man behind the Zabbix community book. So, Patrick, you have huge experience with Zabbix. You started to work with Zabbix a long, long time ago. Can you tell us a little bit the journey you have had and how you started it?
Well, of course. I think it's like 11 years or more that I started to work for the company Open Future. And actually, one of the persons left the company when I came to the company, and that was a guy who was involved with Zabbix. So they asked me if I was interested in picking up his work and continue with Zabbix, and then also become a trainer. So that's when I said, of course, I'm interested in monitoring. And I didn't hear about Zabbix before, so for me it was all new. So at that time I worked myself into Zabbix, and then I came to Riga to become a trainer for Zabbix.
Yes, and you have been a trainer for more than 10 years, so you have all the experience around the tool, you know it so well. And for a person with such a great experience around Zabbix, what is, in your opinion, maybe the best feature about 7.0?
Are we talking about like one of the latest features that became that came into 7, or are we talking about like the best feature that is in 7 that is already maybe available for several years? Or
I think you can choose one of each.
Okay. When we're talking about the best feature in Zabbix, I think low-level discovery, because it's so flexible, it makes it so powerful. If we're talking about one of the latest features that came into 7, I think the optimizations that were done, because now it's so easy to monitor. Before you had to wait before items were synchronized with the cache, and now it's like almost instantly, so you can directly see what you are monitoring.
And today we will hear your speech about the community book about Zabbix. So how did you came up about the idea to create such a book?
Actually, I already wrote a few books, but it was with PacPub, and I was like, yeah, you're writing a book, it takes a lot of time, you have to invest a lot of time for it. And in the end, it's like the publisher gets the best part of it. And I was like, why do I still have to invest my time if it's not really something that, returns to me? And to be honest, I never did it for the money, because you don't get rich from a book. It's more something that you want to do for a status. And I was like, okay, I still want to write a book, but I don't want to involve a publisher. And I was like, why not do it like Zabbix? Zabbix is open source. I work for an open source company. I really like the idea of open source. So for me, it was like, okay, why not try to write a book that is open source? So that's the idea behind it.
That is a great idea. We love to hear that as an open source company. And the last question for you, what would be the main takeaway from your speech today?
That as a community, you can probably reach far. You don't always have to do things by yourself. Just like Zabbix, you see it's evolving a lot over time. So as open source, you can become very strong in what you want to accomplish. And I think that is the idea that you need to keep in mind, that even you do things alone, you're not always alone. If you have a great idea and you can communicate it to the people, then maybe you will find some minds that have the same idea, and that will help you.
Okay, thank you for this interview, Patrick, and I will see you around. The main thing about this is that it is truly the spirit of open source and the community that we have around here, so I'm really looking forward to read this book that we all come up together with. And now we have a colleague of mine, Ronald Schultz, here. He is head of sales here at Zabbix. And the question for you, what do you think is the thing that our customers value the most about Zabbix Summit?
Hi, Christine. Zabbix Summit is a wonderful annual event where all the experienced Zabbix users, partners gather around. And I do believe that the speeches that are provided, they are very knowledgeable and intellectual, and you can learn a lot from those. But nevertheless, the networking part in the evenings, that's just amazing. And that's the real time when everybody can shine and smile and have a friendly chat with each other and exchange the actual knowledge that they have gained over the year. So, yeah.
That's amazing to hear that sales guys can actually have some fun as well. And so for you as a salesperson, as a head of sales in Zabbix, what has been the most popular maybe service that we have provided last year and why you think it is the case?
Well, looking from which perspective? If we're talking about revenue, then that's definitely support contracts. If we're looking from a quantity perspective, the most sold service, training. Definitely that's your part.
That is so awesome for me to hear. As you know, whenever I hear training, I start to smile and I'm happy. And in your opinion, what is the most demanded thing in our community, in the monitoring world, maybe, let's say, and how Zabbix is going to meet that demand?
According to that, to meet that demand, we have a special section on our website, which is called Roadmap. And we try to stay really on top of things, hearing out our customer needs and putting them down in Roadmap to show that we actually care about those and plan to deliver them. However, one important thing I believe is already achieved, which is Zabbix Cloud, and it's finally here. So for those users who felt like it's too much of a hassle to deploy Zabbix, to upgrade Zabbix, to maintain Zabbix, this is what we have come up with, Zabbix Cloud. It's here, it's available, and they can enjoy it.
Thank you, Ronald. It was so amazing to interview you. And talking about Zabbix Cloud, one of the things that is very important also for the cloud is that the MSPs are here and they can benefit the most out of the cloud. And here today with me, I have Andrej Morton from AGM Networks. So how are you enjoying Summit so far?
The Summit's great. It's always great to see other users and vendors and how they use Zabbix, because you can bring it into how you use it then and troubleshoot it, use it to troubleshoot your own problems.
And you have been using Zabbix for quite a while. I know that because I read that in Zabbix blog. So experience for more than 10 years already. How did you came up across Zabbix and how did you actually chose this tool?
So I think I went across loads of blogs and I was looking online and there was lots of comparisons. There were a couple of other open source options. None of them quite did what Zabbix did, and Zabbix allowed me to go from just monitoring very small amounts of data and devices, just making sure they're online or offline. But then over the years, it really allowed me to scale up.
That is great to hear, and that is what we truly believe that Zabbix is capable of. And so in your experience as an MSP, why you think the Zabbix is the best tool for MSPs out there?
So for MSPs, we have a lot of tools which are called remote monitoring and management, and they're great for endpoint management. We have to do patching updates to software, to operating systems, but then we also need to monitor and maintain infrastructure, and there might be a lot of other devices, and there are a lot more things going on. You're usually limited to time intervals when you can monitor. With Zabbix, you can monitor it every second, or you can monitor it every minute. You're not limited. You're also not limited in the number of values you can store, and there's no licensing levels, so you're free to what you want to do. So you can start with one customer, and then you could go up to 100.
Okay, and just for me, maybe the one last question. Can you explain a little bit about MSP? Like, if I want to have your service, what services can I expect to receive from you?
So we specialize in networks and security, but we also do manage endpoints. But we would be able to manage the client infrastructure, everything from day-to-day backups, upgrades, onto full-on infrastructure support, maintenance, seeing where everything's running. If any of your systems are degraded, we should know in advance and be trying to stop that before any issues actually occur. So that's the range, really, of our managed services.
Okay, thank you, Andrej. And this is nice to see that there are companies that are helping people who maybe can't and don't want to do it themselves, so they can rely on the services provided by others. And with that, today's interviews for this lunch is done, and we will see you in the next break. Thank you.
And welcome to the 11th Zabbix Summit. Let's say
Hi, I'm Mariana Portela. I'm an IT specialist from Global, and we started to use Zabbix there monitoring infrastructure. Now we are expanding the monitoring across the company with some media systems and also cloud environments. And I guess Zabbix is a really flexible tool, so we want to take advantage of this and monitoring a lot of stuff, everything you can do.
Yes, well, one of the big advantages, because, well, in the market there are all the solutions, etc., is that Zabbix presents a full package, batteries included, that covers most of the topics that they are required in a monitoring solution. Compared to others, in this case, we have something that we can install and make it work with very little effort in small situations, small, medium-sized situations, but as well is able to scale to a large situation. In our case, precisely, Alenta is specialized in this type of huge installations where we're not talking just about hundreds or thousands, but even hundreds of thousands of hosts. And that we can achieve with Zabbix. So the full spectrum is very wide, and there are no such solutions out there compared to.
I recommend Zabbix because it is just the most capable, the most flexible, and the best monitoring tool you can get.
Backing up this product, so it's not like an open source product where some geek is working in the background on a product, but really we have like real support for these products, and it gives certain confidentiality to your potential customers. So this is one of the reasons why we like Zabbix so much. It's one of the key things that we use in our company. I personally am like a trainer for like 10 years, and I started to work with Zabbix like I think 11, 12 years ago in our company.
I recommend Zabbix because it's an open source solution. It's very flexible. Open source is not only free, but is about flexibility to integrate with your own applications and all you have in your company. And it's easy to get the monitoring of your infrastructure, applications, your business, your services. So it's a huge advantage to use Zabbix. And of course, there are a lot of support of the partners and the vendor to maintain.
I think I've been a partner for now 6 years now, and it's a pleasure
hey guys,
to be a
please come
partner
back
of
to the
a
main hall. We'll be
well-known
starting
monitoring
in
solution
a
around
minute.
the world.
Thank you.
Regarding Zabbix, if I could say something, I think that the guys, the team, and all the team members did a great job about development of the product, how to share their vision of the product. Regarding the roadmap, for example, they communicate to the public what they will do and what they will improve. So as a partner, we could expect that Zabbix listen to us, and we could have several exchanges if we need with the Zabbix team. So I'm really enjoying being part
Okay, guys, welcome back. I can see all of you. You're still joining back in on the main stage, but we'll begin. So over here we have a QR code. If you wish to help us improve Zabbix UX and UI, we have a survey going on where we'll ask you some of the questions that pertain to different Zabbix UI and UI elements and different UX workflows, how Zabbix feels and how it looks. And this will help us improve Zabbix down the line. We know that many things can be simplified in different ways, and your feedback is very important. We'll also publish this survey in various other places, in Telegram for Zabbix Summit, in a bunch of other places, but over here you see the QR code on the screen. Please scan it if you wish to participate in this. Insight gained from this survey will be extremely valuable to us, and we'll actually use it. Our UX and UI people will use it when designing upcoming Zabbix major versions. So your vote very much and your voice very much matters for us. Next up, before we begin, I'd like to mention a couple of upcoming events all across the globe. So first off, we can see on the screen Zabbix Forum Mexico in Mexico City on November 6, 2024. So once again, in all of these events, you'll be able to meet community members from various locations all across the globe, various Zabbix team members. And these events, these conferences will also include various presentations regarding different Zabbix features, use cases, case studies, both from Zabbix team members and also Zabbix community members and partners. Next up, we also, on November 21st to 22nd, we have Zabbix Conference Japan in Tokyo. So if you're nearby or if you want to visit Japan, if you want to visit Tokyo, November 21 to 22 is your chance to meet up with Zabbix Japan community. Then Zabbix Conference Italy on February 20 and 21st in, I'm not sure how to spell it, how to pronounce it, in Bologna? Bologna was the English pronunciation, in Italy. So this is nearby, even local people, if you want to talk to Italian Zabbix community, and not just that, probably European Zabbix community, this is your chance. It's probably a bit warmer there, a bit more, I guess, open, friendly, and temperamental. So you've got that to look out for. Zabbix Conference Germany in Berlin, May 14 to 15, 2024, another large conference where once again you'll be able to network with German Zabbix community and also our partners, team members, and so on. Next up, a large part of our summit is thanking to different components that make Zabbix community whole, essentially. We've thanked our partners. Now we'd like to thank our community members. And we would like to start with the translators. So we have the public translation project where everyone can contribute. And for Zabbix 7.0, we currently have 6,611 translated units. One unit equals to one word or sentence. It depends. But it's an ongoing progress, and people are contributing quite a bit. For Zabbix UI, it's 4,646 units currently. And once again, anyone can help us translate Zabbix to different languages. And next up, we'd like to thank individual top contributors for our translation project. First off, so for Japanese language, this person has translated 3,864 text strings. Nozomi Tadahira, thank you a lot for contributing to Japanese Zabbix translations. Let's have a round of applause for each of our contributors. They're valuable community members, and they actually, with their translations, help us develop the product and reach out to communities all across the globe. Next up, for Chinese, 4,134 strings translated. Jianming Hao, thank you. So for Russian language, 2,333 strings. Konstantin Oshman, thank you. And that's just in the last 12 months. You can see that they've been contributing a lot more over time. In total, it's 4,731 strings translated. Spanish, and we have a big number over here. 21,577 strings. Vicente Salvador, thank you. I'm gonna be butchering some names over here, unfortunately. Let me apologize. Ironically, we're talking about translations, and I'm doing a very bad job right now with translating these names. Catalan, so 4,621 string in the last 12 months, and in total, 26,013 strings. Zevi Noe y Nogueras, thank you. Next up, so this is one part of our community contributions. This year, we also ask you to submit the best dashboard or extension that you could show us. Essentially, show off your Zabbix environment, show off what's unique about it. And we have gathered top 3, in our opinion, which is very subjective, but still, dashboards to show off over here. And let's see what we were able to find. And by the way, this was just within the contest. If you guys still want to submit and contribute your dashboard or your custom extension to Zabbix and just tell us a bit about your dashboards, knock centers, or custom extensions, you can always reach out to us on social networks and we'll gladly show it off. I know you guys have very amazing dashboards going on with custom widgets, custom extensions, plugins, things like that. But from what we've received so far, so the 3rd place goes to Chintaka Udakandage, and what they're showing over here on this dashboard, so it's quite a simple Zabbix dashboard, but that's what I love about it. It gets the message across. We're seeing over here SQL statistics, VM resource usage, critical service states, data store statuses, and a lot more. We have some nice graphs. We have most critical problems, uptimes, top hosts, widgets over here with various resource usages across it. So it's simple, but that's how it should be. At a glance, you can see the most vital information. For the 2nd place, this is more about the variety and also how they're using the latest widgets. Franco Cuneo, and over here on this dashboard, we actually have 3 pages for this dashboard. And what we can see over here, is various networking device usage across different floors, different ports, things like that. So networking devices mostly, but look how they're using honeycombs, they're using gauges, they're using pie charts. That's what I love about it. They've jumped on Zabbix 7.0 and used all of the latest features to get the most out of their environment. And the 1st place, 2-page dashboard with a lot going on in a very simple to view fashion. Once again, we got both the latest widgets, we got honeycombs and gauges, but we also got network maps and top hosts and single item widgets, graphs. And what we're seeing over here is we got network topology, we've got resource utilizations for temperature, CPU usages, things like that. We're seeing uptimes, upload, download speeds, and also we're seeing some Zabbix health-related statistics, values per second, and things like that. So they've fine-tuned their dashboards to see the most relevant Zabbix metrics in a custom way that works the best for them. And that's our 1st place, Abra Parcon. Thank you to all of the guys who have submitted their dashboards. Thank you. Let's have a round of applause for these here contributors. So that was the community award part. Once again, if you wish to share something with us, maybe I missed out on something, dashboards and extensions is just a part of it. If you have a custom template, a case study, whatever Zabbix story you want to share with us, that's extremely valuable for us as a company and for our community. Helps us see how you are using Zabbix and where do you want to go with it. All right, now let's continue with our speeches. We will continue with a case study of sorts, a show-off of how Zabbix can be used in a security operations center. Let's welcome, we'll have 2 speakers on the stage. We'll have Gabriele Miniti, a cybersecurity expert and CEO at Y Security SRI Italy. And we will have Vincenzo Marone, software engineer and pen tester at Y Security SRL SRL Italy. Welcome.
Use the remote. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. We're really happy to be here. So first of all, as said, my name is Gabriele Miniti. I am from Italy with my colleague. So basically, I do work in cybersecurity since 20 years, more or less, when even the cyber as a concept was not there yet. But this is what